ওকে স্যার। স্যার গো লাইভ হয়েছেন? এতেও 50% চার্জ কি করে শেষ হয়ে গেল?
Yes, we are live now. Shubhankar, you can begin. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Shubhankar, you can begin your introduction.
Okay, sir. Sir, let the students join.
Students will join gradually. They have already
Okay.
joined, I think. So that's not a problem. You go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon, honorable speaker, and my dear participants. It is an immense pleasure to welcome you all on this online platform. So on behalf of the Department of English, Dhopguri Girls College, I welcome you all. I would extend my sincere thanks to my departmental colleague for her constant support and cooperation in this regard. Today is really a wonderful day. We have with us Dr. Bijoy Devnath, Honorable Principal, Dhopguri Girls College. May I invite our Principal Sir to say a few words in the form of welcome address to our respected speaker and participants. Sir, please. Sir, have you joined? Okay, sir. Let me continue. We are very much thankful to our principal sir for his constant support, encouragement, and valuable guidance for the lecture. Now it's high time to introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Subhodhi Paul. Dr. Paul is currently working as an assistant professor, Department of English, School of Literature, Language and Cultural Studies, Bankura University, West Bengal. He has taught previously in the PG Department of English, Maulana Azad Government College, Kolkata. He also worked as guest faculty at the PG Department of English, Lady Brabourne College, Kolkata. He has a UGC JRF and SRF at Jadavpur University. His MPhil was on re-evaluation of South Asian diasporic sensibility in Indian expatriate literature. His PhD was a critique of East-West cultural polarizations in Indian English fiction. He has co-edited Anxieties, Influence, and After Critical Responses to Post-Colonialism and Neo-Colonialism. Worldview Publishers in association with Wimbledon Press, UK, 2009. His first book of poems, Finite Sketches, Infinite Riches, received critical acclaim was included in the annual bibliography issue on New Writing from India, edited by Shyamala A. Narayan in the Journal of Commonwealth Literature, Sage 2008. He was also a co-editor of a 2-year major research project from 2016 to 2018 entitled Discoursing the Homeless Elderly, Tropes, Desires, Contentment in collaboration with the University of Swansea, UK. Many of his fictional and non-fictional writings have been found in reputed national and international journals and magazines. The topic of his today's lecture is critical subversions of Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika or the little clay cart. His lecture will really be a source of great inspiration and motivation for all of us. With this brief introduction, may I request and welcome Dr. Paul to deliver his much coveted lecture and thereby enlighten us. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shubhankar, for that lovely introduction. Um, I extend my heartiest thanks and gratitude to uh, this wonderful little college in North Bengal, Dhupuri Girls College, for inviting me over for a lecture. And since the CBCS inception, uh, some of the very radical topics uh, are now considered premier, and a lot of critical discussion has been initiated on them. I would like to specially thank the Honorable Principal, Sir Dr. Vijay Devnath, and the Department of English of this particular college, Shubhankar, Devarati ma'am, and everybody else, and the students, particularly who are watching me live or who would be catching up very soon post recording, and also to all the wonderful scholars and faculty who are interested or would be interested in the topic per se. So, without further ado, let me illuminate a little bit about the schemata on which I want to launch this lecture. I find Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika, also known as the Little Clay Cart, as a very, very subversive play in many different ways, thematically, structurally, intentionally, and with regard to the treatment of archetypes and various other considerations that I will be coming to one by one. Uh, but at the same time, I would also acknowledge the fact that when I was reading this play, of course, in translation, I discovered that a lot of work has been done in the West on Sanskrit drama in general. And this particular play has been translated in the Harvard Oriental series, which was a multi scholar collaboration by the Wales professor of Sanskrit in Harvard University. Uh, and at that point of time, when I think, you know, Rockwell, Charles Rockwell Landman, and others initiated this venture, they might have discovered certain subtleties which later day scholars would embark on and find profitable in their own critical explorations. Now, having said that, I sincerely believe that when we consider the entirety of you know, the oeuvre of Sanskrit drama in particular, we must also consider the fact that Sanskrit was, of course, a very scholarly language. It was definitely very elite in many different ways. And Mrichchhakatika, Sudraka's play, or attributed to Sudraka in that particular manner, uh, has, in the traditional sense of the term, witnessed some mixtures or parallel presences of Sanskrit and Prakrit, terms and words and phrases. So Sanskrit was definitely for the learned, for the elite sections of the society, just as Hebrew, Greek, Latin were in the West. Uh, but at the same time, the mass popularity, or rather the comparatively more prolific presence of Prakrit finds its presence in this particular play, in the original, because this is a play that doesn't deal with only, highfalutin characters only, very elite characters only, but very down to earth characters, the ordinary characters that we find in regular slapsticks and baser forms of comedy, like rogues and thieves and uh, prostitutes and maybe gamblers, and so on and so forth. But a bit about the dramatist before I get into the play per se. And of course, I would like to mention this at the very start, that I will be delivering this lecture primarily in English. But if I, towards the end, see some questions coming from the students, um, which need a little bit of explanation in Bangla, let not, the linguistic point of view be a barrier to our understanding. Of course, I will try to be bilingual also, to the best of my ability. Now, I believe that biographical, reading of this particular play, or a reading primarily based uh, on the viewpoint of the the life and the works of the dramatist himself, uh, will not really be very, illuminating from the point of view of verisimilitude. A biographical criticism is not really warranted as far as this particular play is concerned. The fundamental reason being that details of the life, the dates, and the identity of King Shudraka is a bit scant. And one might even say that, compared or contrasted to Kalidasa or Bhavaguti, you know the authors or the playwrights of the famous plays like Abhigyanam Shakuntalam and Malati Madhava, uh, we do understand that the authenticity or the factual reliability of the biographical details of Shudraka uh, are to be taken with a certain grain of salt. So, an intensive textual reading of this particular play is what I would definitely recommend to my students, and especially my students of the undergraduate courses. Uh, of course, for more advanced readers, we will try to pick up more holistic and maybe more critical points of dissection and analysis. An intensive textual reading of the play would also serve to reveal newer vistas of understanding about Sanskrit drama and dramaturgy in general, also. Now, I'm primarily referring, as far as my quotations are concerned, to the translation by the English translation by Arthur William Ryder. Um, and it was, I think, very popular at that point of time as well. It's still very popular now. Uh, Translated around 1905, Ryder was an instructor of Sanskrit at Harvard University. And according to many of Ryder's personal observations, or rather academic observations on the text, what must be mentioned right at the very start is the fact that Mrichchhakatika is a subversive play, in the sense that it does question a lot of the block or stock presumptions and stereotypes that are associated with Indian drama in particular, Sanskrit drama also in particular, and drama in general. And I'm referring to a particular quotation from the introduction of Ryder's edition, which mentions that the teachable habit of mind was one of the greatest lessons of the East that it could teach to the West. And from there, I learned that in the hands of American Sanskritists like Ryder and Whitney, unconventional, radical, and subversive plays like Mrichchhakatika received what we might call a new lease of life. But then once again, uh, why do I call Mrichchhakatika as ultra subversive from that point of view? Now, the prologue to the play gives us several fanciful statements about the dramatist or the playwright. Mrichchhakatika is his solo magnum opus, and quite interestingly, unlike Abhigyanam Shakuntalam, it cannot be placed under the umbrella of appreciation of European Romanticism. Sudraka's oeuvre, I don't know whether he had one for that matter, because not someone I would call canonical. But of course, as far as this play is concerned, um, has achieved a certain milestone, which I think a lot of time would still be required to fathom the complete complexities that it tends to throw at its readers and audience, depending on whether you're watching it or reading the play. And to credit him, Sudraka can't be credited with titles like Shakespeare of India or something like that, with which I think one might talk about Kalidasa more properly. And nor do we witness in Sudraka the popular mythographical fine tuning that we find in Bhavabhuti's Mahavirachita, which depicts Rama's early life, or Uttara Ramacharita, which describes the latter life, or perhaps that part of Rama's life which is more closely associated with the Ramayana, and which forms the crux of that mega epic. But in Sudraka's play, we do find a peculiar simplicity and profundity that somehow meet and merge, without giving a proper rhyme or reason. This is a rare achievement, according to me, because simplicity and profundity, uh, having a demonstrative capacity of its own, is a very rare specimen in art and aesthetics. But it did work out here, and that is why one would find that style never overrides authenticity, and Sudraka's awareness of man's original disposition makes his characterization poignant, humorous, and realistic. I also find that just as the Aristotelian diktat of the three unities and other, allied basic theorems of dramaturgy were violated by noted playwrights like William Shakespeare, we also find Sudraka questioning and subverting, major premises of dramaturgy, some of them which were laid out by Bharat Muni in Natya Shastra and other such, canonical treatises and works. Not much is known about Sudraka, save that he can possibly be dated to the 5th century. This play, according to many scholars, is dated to the 3rd century. And he is described as, or he has been described as, a Kshatriya king. Okay. Now, there are some sources that claim that Sudraka was actually a Brahmin, and despite being a Brahmin by birth, of course, you are a Brahmin by birth according to caste measures, he had a despicable attitude towards Brahmins, which led to a certain ostracization. And maybe later some of the precepts and tenets were taken up by him. although if we consider him to be a king and having that warrior background, then he would be projected as a Kshatriya. And he is also referred to as the king of Magadha in some, according to some sources, and some sources define him as the king of uh, Avasti or Avanti, you know, towns which have been, or cities which have been related to Ujjaini in the play, directly and indirectly. But what is more interesting is this, that this particular king is said, once again, I would refer to that element of, ambiguity, which is so very important in analyzing the tenor of this particular play. That it is said that he had performed the Ashwamedha yagna, or the horse sacrifice. And at the same time, he was a very devoted Shaivite. He was a Shiva worshipper. And at the same time, he was an expert in elephant training and elephant mastering, and so on and so forth. So basically, it means that he had some bit of um, martial training, so to say. Once again, it is said so. And one other point which is to be noted in this connection, which is a very, very important point, is that he is said to have been an expert, or a knowledgeable person as far as Kama Shastra, or the art of love, is concerned. Now, what does this, make out of the whole situation? Uh, if you refer to, texts like Castiglione's The Courtier, or if you refer to the Arthashastra by Kautilya, you would know that there are several, attributes that the courtier, or the royal intern, is supposed to acquire before he becomes a practicing prince, or king down the line. And one of these attributes is that he master the art of you know the command over the body and bodily senses, and to help these young princes in this activity, oftentimes the royal courtesans played a very prominent role. And so I think that when we uh, consider the status of the courtesan of our immediate heroine in this particular play, we must keep in mind that we are not really treating her as an outcast. From today's context, definitely not, because I wouldn't be using the word prostitute in the first place. I would be using the word sex worker. But even without that, I would say that the courtesans of that milieu that we are talking about, which of course predates Christianity and the Mughal rule, uh, would be a class who were next to the queen. And they had some royal privileges, but at the same time, they had some royal bindings. And they enjoyed some immunity, and some say in their affairs. And at the same time, it is also reported that they had facilities like pensionary benefits and other things, which gave them a certain position in society. But at the same time, these were women who were on the fringe at the same time, because they were not in the mainstream. They were culturally othered in some ways. And that is one of the reasons why our heroine in this particular play, should I be using the term heroine, or female protagonist would be a better term? She is a very special character, because she is both a central character, and at the same time she is on the margins. So, like when I teach Twelfth Night, Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, I mentioned this about Feste, that he is both, central to the plot, but at the same time, he is outside the plot as well. He's outside the schemata of the story, at least as far as that is concerned. Now, having said that, I would believe that this acquisition, if we consider the dramatist to be a king, is that he might have had a close favorite as far as that is concerned, and a lot of debatable propositions would be raised, which would once again put this whole banner of, which might be also known as a subtitle to the play, the subtitle which is known as a Hindu drama, the entire Hindu ethos to the play will also be subverted in a certain manner. Because once again, my reason for having to tell you that is that Vasanta Sena is not really a typical Sita Savitri Damayanti, nor is she exactly alike Draupadi. Though in the text you will find cross references made to some of these mythical prototypes and characters. The characterization of this play is very cosmopolitan. It is very democratic. Well, that isn't something very new, I guess, because there are a lot of there are a lot of dramatists who bring radical characters to the foreplay. There are a lot of characters where there are a lot of dramatists where who are interested in bringing plebeian characters and elite characters on a juxtaposed level of interaction. And there are several dramatists who believe that not only a sense of juxtaposition, but also a sense of holistic interaction is what is to be warranted from such kind of personal and collective exchanges. So that is something we would like to look at, whether that becomes a veritable possibility in this particular play. But I would refer to Richmond P. Farley, who opines in his essay, Characteristics of Sanskrit Theatre and Drama. It presents in the wonderful book called Indian Theatre Tradition of Performance, whereby he mentions that this particular king, Sudraka, was a very mysterious figure, and it is also mentioned in some of the other, canonical works, roughly before and after the same milieu, which posit this idea that Sudraka lived to a very ripe age of 100 or 110, and if that is the idea, then and if he is the creator of this particular play, then he must have been a very wise king, and he must have ruled his kingdom very wisely. And after a certain point of time, he passed it on to his son, by through a process of voluntary relinquishment. And it is also interesting to note that in this particular play, the main male character, Charu, we find in Charu the fact that he's very integrally associated with his son. He loves his son a lot. In fact, his death wish, which very fortunately does not come true, his execution is halted before that, is that I should like to see my son. So these are some of the maybe real life and script life connectivities that we would like to point out, that I would like to point out, and we might like to explore. But despite that, the level of plausibility and the very uneasy terrain where myth and history tend to be on a slippery ground. I'm sure these days it becomes very important to distinguish the two, because history is often forgotten, and myth is often forcefully projected as history. So we must be very careful about that. And at the same time, we must also be careful about the fact that history is not just the fact out there as it happened. Of course, we are trying to get at it, but history also has pluri-signified, multifarious levels of narration and description. And this play, as far as its text is concerned, is certainly open to multiple interpretations, and that is what is being done as far as modern scholarship is concerned. But we must also be careful in treading the fine line, because many of you know that uh, there are history books that show Samudragupta, King Samudragupta, playing the veena. And of course, these are inscribed on coins at that point of time. So gives a sense of cultural attribute of the ruler, which also tends to have a mass appeal on the general body politic. I think politicians do that even now when they, irrespective of who they are, they tend to project themselves in a certain cultural light, and we have to be wary about these artificial projections. If that's a natural one, it's not a question, because it would be automatically revealed. But if it is not so, if it's just a superimposition, then it might be that and once again I'm keeping the plausible line open, that it might be that there might be the presence of a ghost writer and an appropriation in a different hand. But that is once again in the realm of a controversial speculation, to which I would not like to go into. That is a controversy theory to which even William Shakespeare has not been uh, able to immunize himself from, or immune himself from. So that is once again to be kept in the realm of speculation. But having said that, if we are to consider the entire, illustration from the point of view of, Barth's death of the author syndrome, then there is a gradual, obfuscation of the dramatist, or the play becomes more prominent than the playwright. uh, that doesn't happen entirely as well, because the imprint of the playwright remains very strong on the play, not just in the prologue, which gives a rather fanciful introduction to the playwright. It's also a bit of tongue-in-cheek kind of a self-praise that Sudraka gives to himself. But at the same time, there is also the element of you know heterogeneity, ambiguity, and the grayness or the gray shadedness of human beings, that it is a very wrong idea to render anybody in black or in white terms. Uh, like as social media has enabled us to come close, the world has indeed become a post McLuhan village, global village. It has also kind of somehow tended to raise, you know, mufassil gossip to the level of universal appeal. That way, that like we tend to believe completely what others say, or we tend to dismiss completely what others say, both of which are incorrect. Everything is to be treated with a grain of salt, and that is how I think one would clearly understand that this is a play which does not have that sense of high romantic or heroic strain that Shakuntala has, or for that matter the hallowed mythographical and sense of historical righteousness that maybe some of the other Sanskrit dramatists have. This is a play which is very down to earth, but at the same time, it does not show us at our worst, situations. Well, it does. It does show some of the characters who are absolutely heinous, who are very vicious, who have those intricate patches in their hearts, who are not open-minded, definitely not virtuous. But at the same time, even these characters, they get a redeeming chance. It's not. I wouldn't say that they are forgiven outright, but at the same time they are given a redeeming chance, like they are given responsibilities which would automatically compel them to perform. And that is something that I think is a very good thing, because it brings everyone to a level of uh, mutual and universal participation, which is not to be followed. Now, having said that, we are, as Ryder says, forced to concentrate attention on the man as he reveals himself in his works. Now, this fundamental subversion is interesting because Sudraka, I think, does not really forcibly try to be graceful like Kalidasa, or nor does he want to be as mellifluous or eloquent as Bhavaguti. But he doesn't, even for a single bit, try to remove his democratic imprint from the play. Now, the little play card, for that reason, I think is highly cosmopolitan, is highly secular, and yet it affords a peculiar Indian ethos of the Bakhtinian carnivalesque in a very unique manner. Okay, so well, Madhava is a Hindu hero in as far as Bhavahuti is concerned, but I do not think Charu would really emerge as heroic in that sense, other than the fact that if you consider his virtue as stronger than the total wealth and military strength of the other characters combined together. Other than that, he is a self-despising, lamenting, protagonist who is cursing his own fate for being poor. But then once again, being poor is not a very noble idea, and I will come to lines which will justify that. Some of the anagnoretic realizations that these characters have from their individual points of view are things which will make everyone think. We might not all be billionaires, but at the same time, none of us want to be penury stricken. You know, like in this extended pandemic, I'm sure we are all thinking about people who are not getting medical help for whatever be the reasons. But we are not thinking so much about those people who just for the whole hard work they did throughout the day manage 2 square meals a day. They are not even getting that. So, well, to die of COVID is definitely one of the most tragic things, lamentable things to happen. And it is happening with a lot of our near and dear ones, close friends and accomplices and confidants. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who, because of this, uh, the repercussions of the extended pandemic, they are having to shut down their work, and they are living in abject poverty, penury, and starvation. There are countless people who are perhaps even dying of starvation. And that is something we cannot tend to just overlook just because, a certain edict of drama likes to talk about royal people only. That is not right. There is more democratization at work, which I think, as far as American drama is concerned, began with Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, that democratized drama, especially tragic drama, in a very major way. Now, having said all that, I would like to truncate some of the more, you know, I would say maybe not so primary elaborations that I had earlier made, and I would like to come to the generic quality of this play. In what way is Mrichchhakatika a very subversive play as far as its generic treatment is concerned? Well, it's highly subversive because you will see that this is one play where universal axioms and topical verities, they are being dealt out on a same level, on a similar platform, you know. And that is being made possible, that has been made possible because farce and tragedy, satire and pathos, gravity and levity, they are, also aligned, sometimes juxtaposed, sometimes counterposed on the same platform. And reality and pathos, they hit each other and they merge at times in very wonderful ways. Like, I'll quote a particular line from the text to illustrate my point, a line which is very close to my heart, should be close to any of you who has seen, financial hardships at any point in your life, or who might have seen the uglier side of not having money or wealth. Empty his house, to whom no child was born. Thrice empty his, who lacks true friends and sure. To fools the world is empty and forlorn, but all that is empty to the poor. So Charudatta's observations makes us think that we really, at least from the Indian point of view, we have never really wanted to glorify or romanticize melancholy, penury, vanaprastha in a major way. I really don't know how to symbolize the entire edict with Dushyanta or Rama as far as these two characters are concerned. Of course, larger than life characters are concerned. But despite political statements aside, I mean political observations aside, one thing I would like to definitely add is the fact that some of the so-called mytho historical figures have been valorized over ages because they have postulated some good values. They have prioritized values over vices. They have projected a certain life which has made a mass appeal to the body politic across ages. And it is unfortunate that we have picked up their names only. We have not picked up their habits. But if we really learn from their habits, their hardships, their relinquishments, then maybe we will realize that these are characters which the stock characters of the average Western drama or drama from the Occident will not be able to immediately fathom. It might even, defy the Occidental imagination in a major way. But we do understand that from the bourgeois standpoint, leave alone from the absolutely subaltern or from the absolutely elite standpoint, from the normal bourgeois standpoint, almost everybody would recognize this particular line. And I quote, the lack of money is the root of all evil. The lack of money is the root of all evil. But once again, it is not only for money that all the other characters who are not so good in this particular play do the kind of subterfuges and false actions that they commit themselves to. There are other reasons. There are other motivations, like lust, like jealousy, like avarice, like of course the biggest sin perhaps in my opinion, greed, and also this inexplicable uh, tendency in human beings, which is not to reach the level of the best, but to tarnish the best, to make the best the worst, and thereby gain some additional, maybe personal mileage. Uh, that is, of course, I think at present, popular culture in the West has definitely made itself available too. That's the reason, perhaps, why Batman is the Dark Knight, and though he doesn't feel any necessity of justifying it, so long as people are happy, healthy, and safe. So that is something I think needs to be very seriously considered. And I think Charu is someone who is virtuous, so much so that his entire family chain, his father, his grandfather, who were good merchants at one point of time, they are perceived in a respectable light by others. And yet, what is more interesting is this, that though you might have had a very good family past or a good economic history in the family, the present status of Charu is abysmal. He has lost his fortunes. He is like Antonio in The Merchant of Venice, whose ships are reportedly said to have drowned at sea. So he cannot help his friend Bassanio in need, and they have to go and take, some loan from the very quote unquote crooked Jew who is Shylock. Now, once again, the color of money plays its important part here, because you are having to take bad money from a bad man for a good purpose, demonstrated by good people. So, what is the color of money? In this case as well, Vasanta Sena, the heroine, she's a courtesan. I told you about that. But the money that she makes is something that we must pay very close attention to, because that is the money that is utilized for some good causes. One of the most important among them being the way she redeems the shampooer, and who ultimately becomes that monk, the Buddhist monk, and vows to remain a monk because he has truly understood the meaning of this spiritual life. Though it's a different story that after everything is set right, Charu decides to make him the head of the monasteries of the land, which is a sort of a public functionary duty that is given to him. But other than that, what is very interesting is this, that uh, life gives us a lot of things. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, some of them are appetizing for us, some of them are not so coveted by us. But each and everything that happens to us happens for a reason, changes us, and stays with us. It is very unnecessary to become someone that you are not, and that is one of the reasons why any kind of uh, coerced or forceful implication or action by any character in this particular play doesn't really help, doesn't really turn fruitful in the end. Characters realize their manifest destinies, maybe not in ways they would have thought it possible, but ultimately, things are set right, and virtue is rewarded. But then you might be questioning to yourself, that is that really a very realistic appraisal of things? Because even in Shakespearean plays like Twelfth Night, I was referring to that, and some of the other so-called I think romantic comedies and romances, we find that, of course, there is the reward of virtue and love and all that, but not all characters are rewarded. Not every turnout is a happy one. There are characters who are left out. There are situations which are left unresolved, and characters promise to do something about it after the curtain falls, which is a way of leaving things open ended, or having a certain hermeneutic imprint on them. But I think that we have to really think about the innate goodness in characters. And that is why I think that when Vasanta Sena, the courtesan, is reminded that, please, madam, keep this in mind, that Charu is poor. That's a very important thing to say. You are a man. You are projecting your handsomeness, your knowledge, your talents, your let's say your wit and everything. But you are a complete basanio, so to say. But at the end of the day, you don't have the funds to get things done. That is not really a good mover, according to the critical observation made here. But what does Vasanta Sena say in response to this? And I quote her: "For a courtesan who sets her heart on a poor man is blameless in the eyes of the world." A courtesan who sets her heart on a poor man is blameless in the eyes of the world, because the world fundamentally doesn't understand what love is, or what it is to love in with an absolute sense of selflessness involved in the whole thing. And in this regard, I would like to make these cross references uh, on plays that we have taught at some level earlier, or maybe you are teaching now, or you are learning now, you're reading now, which is that if you look at The Merchant of Venice, for instance, you would find that we have the topos, the cultural topos of these two places, like Belmont and Venice. Belmont, of course, standing for love, and Venice standing for money, and they tend to mutually, influence each other. And we find that, of course, money influencing love, love influencing money, and of course, trying to make a more holistic appraisal of human life. But in this case, of course, with Vasanta Sena, we find a peculiar, turnout that um, she realizes the marginal position that she is in. She knows that, well, she wouldn't be like a Sakuntala who will choose to wait for Dushyanta's return, or who will have her heart set on Dushyanta, or a Sita Devi who would be, who would be waiting for Rama to come and rescue her, and even if that meant waiting like Penelope for 20 years or 10 years or 15 years, she would be doing the same, despite all the other provocations which would be coming to her. Well, this is not exactly that case, because we are not really talking about a queen in this case. We are talking about a courtesan who is an important figure in that land, whom most people know. But at the same time, she occupies a position which is a fringe position, as I have said, because um, due to her profession and vocation, she is also not till the very end, uh, homogenized in the general matrix of the characterization, or as far as the plot is concerned, that thing. So we do find that the baddie, or the villain, Sanstanaka, uh, you know, Relling constantly pursuing her, constantly trying to justify his presence over Charu, and that is also a sign where I think that you have this particular person who clearly fails to understand a woman's heart, and that is one of the reasons why I think that he tries to vilify Charu. At first, he tries to vilify Charu by poisoning her ear. But when that is not made possible, then he tries to create situations of intrigue where he might be in a legal turmoil. And we actually have the lawsuit scene down the line where there is this situation that puts the life and the future of Charu at risk. But this is something that I think Vasanta Sena can do nothing about, despite the fact that, like critics have compared the position of the courtesan to that of the Hetairai of ancient Greece or the geishas of Japan. But once again, like she herself becomes helpless in this situation, and she really doesn't know how to, get Charu out of this quagmire. But there are instances when when we see that uh, she wants to be possessed by Charu. This possession complex, or this possession, this desire for possessiveness, um, is something which, of course, cannot be completely described or justified in objective terms. But we realize that, if even someone who might not be in a conjugal position, or in a sort of a societally recognized matrimonial alliance, can definitely have a soft corner, a, a sort of a burning passion for someone special. And that is what I find with Vasanta Sena, because when Madanika tells her, "But mistress, do the butterflies visit the mango tree when its blossoms have fallen?" And her reply is, Vasanta Sena replies, "That is why we call that sort of a girl a butterfly." Okay. Now this is interesting because the average man would be after the blossoms, but here we are talking about a male, protagonist. We are talking about Charu, who loves the tree more than the blossoms per se. For him, the tree matters. And of course, it's mutual. It's vice versa. It's reciprocal, and that is a good thing. So yes, some of my students have often asked me that this kind of sort of hegemonic universalization of marriage that is somehow preached or advocated. Well, let us not be cynical about that, but what I mean to say is this, that the love of these two characters are so strong that they are uh, abstracted from all kinds of limitations. Charu gets removed from his lawsuit. Charu emerges from his penury. Charu regains the respectability and the fortitude that his forefathers once had. And towards the end, even before the execution of Charu, there is this mention that, uh, well, the execution can be halted because the court has left the decision in the hands of the king. So it's like, a death sentence has been passed on a convict, but a higher appeal has been made, and now it is up to the president's discretionary powers to decide the fate of the convict. In this case as well, the king would be deciding. But let us not forget that our chief villain is related to the bad king as well. And that is why there is every chance that Charu will not be saved, despite everything good said about him, despite all the good public opinion about him, that, well, he's the son of Sagaradatta and he is the grandson of Vinayadatta, and he comes from this very good merchant's family. In The Merchant of Venice, you had seen that the goodwill of Antonio did not really help him, because Shylock stuck to his claim his legal bond, that failing which this is what he would be extracting from Antonio, the pound of flesh, and all that, which I think you know it very well. So I'm not going into that. But what I would like to mention in this context is this, that Vasantasena admits that she is not really that stainless lotus flower, you know, and she knows why the honeybees adore her, but she also knows that her heart is pure. Of course, a lot has been talked about regarding the purity of a woman from a patriarchal point of view, from a very heteropatriarchal, ultra hegemonistic point of view. We have several texts that have debated this. Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Hardy, and of course many other texts where the Scarlet Letter by Hawthorne, where the purity of the woman uh, has that is said to reside in her body has been challenged, has been critiqued, has been subverted, and a similar kind of a thing is attempted here, because we find that Vasadasena mentions this, and it is the glory of a courtesan to set her love upon an honest man. So no matter whoever comes to her for physical gratification, she has a say in that matter, because of course someone who gives her price has got her physical presence. But whom she will give her heart to is something that others won't decide. Not even the king of the land will get to decide whom she gives her heart to. And this is one of the reasons why the purity of and the sheer strength of this love is what wins kudos at the end of the day, because no matter how many traps had been laid out for them in the garden of Pushpakaranda and other scenes that we see, we find that ultimately there is a sort of an untangling of the knots, and a wish fulfillment strategy at work, a sort of a divine redemption working towards the end, that sets these characters not only free, but also helps them get united in a very decisive manner. At least that was what everybody was wanting at that point of time. And what is also interesting is this, that I had initially talked about the caste angle, and I told you about the fact that I will tell you something about it, which is this, that when the court decides the lawsuit, at that point of time it is mentioned that since you are a Brahmin, there is the law of the land, which says that even if a Brahmin is proved guilty, the Brahmin's life will not be seized. Rather, he will be deported to a different land. He'll just be removed from that land. He will be excommunicated, not only in a social sense, but in a material sense. Okay. Now, I have also heard several comments on this, that this is also caste prejudice at work and all that. Now, I wouldn't be judging this from a political point of view, because you see, if we have to do that, then we have to start critiquing major epics like the Mahabharata, where you will find a lot of caste discrimination at work, which might not be operative the same way as would be the understanding of caste and class in today's parlance, from today's point of view. But what I would definitely like to say, in addition to this, is this, that it is a miracle. It is a providential hand that saves Charu. But at the same time, let us not forget that the epilogue of the play also reminds the audience what the Brahmins have to do. You know, the Brahmins get some immunity. which also means that the Brahmins get some duties, because we have learned this in political science that when you enjoy some privileges, then there are some corresponding duties that you have to perform, some obligations that are entrusted to you, and this is what we would be referring to, that that sense of balance proportion is something that we have to think about, because of course not everything is very innocent. This is a land, Ujjaini is a land where there are money handy people, moneyed people, wealthy people who keep indebted people as slaves, and slaves realize that it's very difficult for them to justify uh, you know their standpoint. Well, a lot of people, like the shampooer have lost their fortunes at gambling. But then gambling is a universal preoccupation. A lot of people from all walks of life are gamblers. They have gambled a lot of things. Some gamble 100 rupees, some gamble their entire kingdoms and wives. We have seen that in the Mahabharata as well. So that's not something for which only the poor shampooer has to be, criticized. But what is more serious, according to me, is this one single line in the play, which I think is the defining line in the entire play. That line is when the wheel of fortune turns, and Charu, from being a victim, he comes to that position where people seek advice from him. Charu, you tell us what to do with this guy, whether to kill him or to send him to the dungeons, what has to be done to him. And we also realize that quite miraculously, if not impossibly, there are no accidents. Everything is an incident. Uh, that very famous saying. So based on that, King Aryaka, the good replacement, has already arrived after slaying the bad king, King Palaka. Because you see, a regime cannot be left at vacuum. You know, we have to have a good we have to have a good administration everywhere, and we have to have good people, no matter how many evil and vicious people might be all around us. And when the good tidings come, it is Charu who himself is wonderstruck, and he says that perhaps the kingdom has been won through virtues. This is interesting, that not only the kingdom of Ujjaini has been reclaimed by virtue, but the kingdom of the heart has also been won through sheer virtue. Nothing other than that. Okay, and it is by a turn of events that the heroine becomes the wedded wife, and she says that I desire no more. This is my ultimate wish, and all that. But let us not forget that one single line that Charu says, but cruelty, but cruelty with kindness paid. You know, pay with kindness the cruelty that is meted out to you. So this idea of Gandhian pacifism, the idea of that Buddha preached, the whole edict of pacifism, what we are researching in peace studies, the central tenet of the teachings of Lord Krishna, the central tenets of Christianity, the spreading of universal love, fraternity, and brotherhood, is something that is central to the way. And that is something that does not get affected by only the elite sections of our society. You see, this is a raging pandemic right now, at least as far as India is concerned. Uh, and let us remember that for all the kind of the critiques, the criticisms, the sort of savage banter and accusations that we are throwing to different kinds of governments for not being instrumental in delivering the democratic shares to the people, let us not also forget that it is the general body politic also, not all of them, once again, some of them who are indulging in black marketing, in hoarding, in profit maximization, in depriving the needy of their requirements. And at the same time, there are volunteers, there are donors, there are helpers who are social workers who are out there on the streets and who are trying to do things right. So everything, everyone has a responsibility. Doesn't matter whether you have donated 1 crore INR or 1 INR only. What matters is the action. What matters is the reach. What matters is the dissemination of virtue. Just as knowledge is useless without dissemination, virtue is also kind of somehow defunct without dissemination. So Charu is not one character who would like to remain that hallowed man that I, me, and myself. Charu would like to have more Charus around him in order to support the support system of Ujjaini for the future. So, with this, I think the wishes of Charu are projected onto the epilogue. Please read the epilogue carefully, and there you will understand that in paths of righteousness may Brahmins tread, and high esteem their deserving bed. But may kings in justice ways be ever led, and earth submissive bend her grateful head. So, when the upper echelons of society, they lead by example, then the lower echelons are also motivated. You know, maybe not in immediate terms. I can teach something, maybe an older generation person, maybe a third generation person will not pick that up. But a first generation individual, a new learner, might be motivated to pick my child, my son or my daughter, might be more socially committed than I ever was, and that is an achievement in itself, I think. So it is that sense of humility, that sense of gratitude, that sense of the entire synchronicity between us and our habitat taken together is what we have to consider for this particular play. I can go on, but I would like to end here because I think we are running slightly short of time, or there might be questions that would be coming. I'll try to answer them, but I would like to hand over the forum to Shubhankar and Devaruti.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for such enlightening lecture for us. Now, I would like to request my respected colleague, Dr. Devaruti Dotto, to read out the questions which are asked by some of our students. Please, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Shubhankar. So, first of all, let me thank Professor Paul for this like enlightening lecture, and I think some of our students have also enjoyed it thoroughly. There are a few questions which have come up. Let me take the questions as a whole. Is it okay, Professor Paul? Should I take?
Let's come
Oh,
one at a time. I will
okay,
be very
okay,
brief.
okay, sir. So the first question is asked by Anindita Chakraborty. She is asking that what kind of picture of the society has emerged through the play Mrichchhakatika, and also she is also asking that what do you think is the predominant sentiment that the play reveals?
That's quite interesting because you know I'll primarily answer the social ethos part first. because that is very important while coming to a sense of understanding of the characters. The most important thing in this context, in the context of Mrichchhakatika at least, is the fact that Ujjaini as a prototypical kingdom, should I call it a Hindu kingdom? Well, as an Indian kingdom, let me be more accommodative, uh, is a kingdom which has its share of virtues and vices. Uh, when we talk about a Ram Rajya, we definitely talk about a very prosperous kingdom, a kingdom where there is a sense of connection between the subjects and the ruler. That is very important. A sense of reciprocation between the subjects and the rulers. Uh, a sense of exchange. But that seems to have, snapped when the play began. That is very important. You see, when we talk about Indian history, we cannot say that all regimes were autocratic and bad and exploitative. There were some very good regimes where there was very good intercultural behavior and amity and sense of cohesion and all that. But it happens that sometimes, there are questionable regimes. And during those times, the, the ordinary people, the bourgeois, the lower class people, they are the ones who suffer the most. And that is what is evident here as well, because otherwise it is a society that has its own hierarchies and rigidities and all that. But at the same time, let us also understand that the caste issue, in particular, at one point of time, it evolved because there was occupational specialization. Like so, if my grandfather knew all the verses and it was handed on, tradition, family to family, generation after generation, then there would be a sense of continuity. That does not happen now, so that kind of uh, social setup is no longer required anymore. That's why we have dismantled some of the caste rigidities that were existing at one point of time. And so this is very important, that despite all those rigidities that used to exist at that point of time, there was interaction, you know between characters. And at the same time, people were more into gambling and stealing and committing adultery and all sorts of social vices was very rampant at that point of time. I'm not going into Vasanta Sena's profession because I have already um, outlined the social edifice of that profession. But from a different angle, what I'm trying to get at the other professions which are at work, which is this, that there was a sense of cohesion which was increasingly getting snapped at several levels. But with characters like Charu, we find that there is a regaining of a holistic trust, a regaining of social performance, uh, you know, the idea of mutual dependability, giving your best in everything. These things were coming to the fore. So it is almost like a moral fable from that aspect. But once again, the fabular nature of this play is not like that of a typical, Western fabula, for that matter, which is superimposed from the outside. This is a very naturalized, fable, because moralities are not, external devices that you implement through moral science classes. Morality is individual. Your morals and my morals may be different, but we must all have a collective sense of ethics, and which is only when society will progress properly. So I think we have to look at Ujjaini, we have to look at the social ethos of the play based on both these setups, the setup of a very dystopic situation and the prospect of a very utopian future. দুটোকেই দেখতে হবে simultaneously.
The next question is from Pinky Ghosh. She's asking that why and how does Vasanta Sena communicate her love to Charu Datta?
Well, of course, that's a very textual question, and I'm sure that
Yeah.
you have
এটা ঢুকে গিয়ে
understood it from
কয়েকটা স্ক্রিনশট সুন্দর করে
you
নাও
have understood that from
আমার
the
ছবিগুলো দেখে
quintessential. Just a minute.
সরি ঢুকে যাও
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have understood that from the quintessential proposition itself, which is this that Vasanta Sena likes this thing about Charu, that he is primarily an honest person. The other thing is this, that his poverty puts him at that position where he no longer, like a failed zamindar, tries to maintain a social position that he can't afford. You know, it's not like Basanio that beg, borrow, or steal, give me goods so that I can go to the Swayamvar. It's not like that. You know, he knows he is in bad times, he curses his fate, but he does not beg, borrow, or steal. He awaits a sense of judgment. The other thing that I like about Vasanta Sena's approach to Charu is the fact that other men primarily pursue her for her physical charms. That is pretty much well known. But there has been a correspondence between our hero and heroine, and which is something that Vasanta Sena's mother also knows about. যারা প্লেটা দেখেছো মানে পড়েছো বা কোনো একটা সময় যদি কোনো টেলিকাস্ট ভার্সন দেখেও থাকো আর কি, একটা জিনিস দেখবে যে ট্রায়াল সিনে কিন্তু বসন্ত সেনার মাকে ডাকা হয় এবং তাকে একটা উইটনেস দিতে বলা হয়। এবং যখন উনি চারুকে দেখেন স্ট্যান্ডিং অন দি আদার সাইড অফ দ্য উইটনেস বক্স, she says that this is a line from the text, আমার মেয়ের যৌবন সঠিক হাতে গেছে, my daughter's youth has gone in right hands. It's a big remark for a mother to make about her daughter. So it doesn't matter what your profession is, you are a human being, you are somebody's daughter, and you can have some dreams which might be different from the normal thing that you do. So you might be an academic, but it might be your interest to sing or dance or paint or write. That is very much possible. Similarly, there is no harm in trying to embark on social climbing, or trying to find a good life partner, or trying to choose a form of life which you think is good for yourself. কেন ভালো লাগে, মানে কেন একজন আরেকজনকে ভালো লেগেছে বা লাগে, সেটার কোনো এক্সপ্লেনেটরি উত্তর হয় না। বাট যদি হয় তাহলে আমি সেইভাবেই বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করি। এই কোয়ালিটিস গুলোর জন্য কিন্তু হয়তো বসন্ত সেনা জানে যে উনি একজন মার্জিনাল ক্যারেক্টার ইন আ ওয়ে, ভালোবাসাটা উনি চারুর প্রতি দিয়েছে। দ্যাটস দ্য ওয়ে আই উড রিড ইট।
Okay, carry on.
Yeah, there are no more questions as of now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
So I think that Shubhankar, if there are any other doubts or questions that the students have, or any of my audience members have at any point of time, you can email me, or you can write to me, you can text me. I will try to answer to the best of my ability. All the best to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it is high time for us to request my respected colleague Dr. Devaruti Datta to propose a vote of thanks to our
It has been really a great pleasure and honor for us at the English department of Dhupguri Girls College to hear Professor Shubhadeep Paul and his insightful lecture on the critical subversions in Sudraka's Mrichchhakatika, or the little clay cart, as the English translation goes. On behalf of my college, the English department, and especially my students, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Paul for his valuable lecture. And I hope this has been really a enriching experience for our students to hear you, Professor Paul. And hopefully we will have some other valuable sessions with you in future. So we hope to hear from you in future as well. So thank you once again for this lovely presentation and talk to our students. Thank you. Shubhankar.
We hope to meet you physically very soon. Thank you. I would like to end the lecture today. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are taking a leave from this room, right, Shubhankar?
Okay. Let's take leave and.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.